Welcome to Proof Points, a podcast by Latham High-Tech Seeds. Family owned and farm proven for more than 75 years, Latham Seeds is growing strong. Now, here's product manager and host of Proof Points, Steve Sick.
Today we're here with Justin from Central Minnesota. How are you today, Justin?
I'm doing great. How are you, Steve?
Good. Everything's going well. So I know you had a challenging spring, some heavy rainfall events and such, and it was tough getting things planted. So what's new in your territory?
Yeah, we got all the replants in. A lot of the farms around had 30% of their corn was replanted just because of ponding water and crusting soils. And so got all the replants in. They look really good. We're starting to get pretty dry. We've got a chance of rain over the weekend, but we're starting to get dry, and corn's starting to roll up and show some symptomology of those dry conditions. So could use a shot of rain. On the beans side, there's some IDC showing up in certain areas as you get north of Highway 14, and then as you go north, IDC is a big issue for us in soybeans with high pH and high salt. So been looking at that and just taking some notes on different varieties and how they respond to tough IDC and high pH. So been learning a lot, especially on new products coming out for next year. So it's really exciting.
Good. Do you think IDC is a little bit more pronounced this year because of the type of year we've had, type of spring we had with the heavy rains and a lot of moisture?
Normally the moisture would push the salts down. So I don't know if we've got a big salt issue, but IDC and high pH is always an issue for us every single year. And it's all based on soil types. And so we've got different soil types like Canisteos in Redwood County and Harps as you move north. And those soil types tend to carry high pH. And where they normally sit is on the outside perimeter of your old lake bottoms. And so we know where they're at. We just tend to manage them with different products like in-furrow iron products to help with that iron deficiency. So
one thing of note on the IDC, do you think it's gotten worse throughout the years, or are you staying about consistent, or is this year kind of an anomaly?
I would say it's consistent, and we're getting better at managing how we deal with it with different varieties and product placement, as well as those in-furrow products. So I think we're just getting better at managing it. And this year it's showing up. That root layer is right there in that high pH zone right now. So I think if we can get a rain to get these soybeans growing more, we should be able to grow out of some of it. But there's certain varieties that really can't handle it. So we have to be cautious on placing those soybeans in those tough areas.
What's Latham doing to help you address that IDC concern?
I think we're doing a great job as a company looking at whether it's the salt excluder gene on different soybeans in those high salt instances. But really looking at soybeans as a whole and what that score is. I like to put some of our plots in high pH areas so we can get solid scores on that, and then take that information to our customers so we have confidence when we go out and place different products. So I think looking at the future and our new lineup for next year, we've got a solid lineup coming with really good IDC characteristics. So I'm really excited.
Good. Good to hear. One thing I wanted to get back to was you mentioned previously, you had about 30% corn replant. Are folks in your area, do they pretty much stay with the same maturity, or kind of what's your recommendation on maturities on replant?
For corn, they'll move a little earlier in maturities. So the big rainfall event came around the 10th to 13th of May, and by the time we got back out to replant, it was towards the end of May to the beginning of June. So some guys that had a majority of their farm in that 95 to 100 day went to more of an 89-day product or a 90-day product, just to
Okay.
early it up a little bit, so they mature around the same time. The guys that normally are in that 103 to 108-day maturity range, they kind of stuck with that 95 to 96-day product, just
Mhm.
just to make sure that they're maturing around that same time. So
Okay. Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb and good suggestion. So, kind of what are dealers, customers in your area thinking or most concerned about this year as we head into, we're just beginning 2023 growing season. We've got a lot of time left yet. Hopefully, a lot of time yet before we get even hint at a frost date. But, kind of what's the biggest concerns and thoughts from your customers in your area?
I think um, as you move, I think it's the same thought and concern throughout the entire U.S., and that's drought.
Well,
We need. Um, we're not even to the end of June yet, and things are starting to show symptoms of things drying out. So
hmm.
I think that's on everybody's mind right now, is if we're going to have enough moisture to finish this crop out. So
To follow up on the drought comment, are there any thoughts or concerns? Obviously, with drought usually comes a lower crop. Obviously, I've seen they've lowered the estimates on overall crop yields and everything.
yep,
Obviously, pricing and commodity prices in the fall have to be weighing too on your customers.
absolutely. Um, with with that, um, yeah, if depends on the area, and the drought monitor. I see that they're continuing to change that as you get into the southern half of Redwood County and then down to I-90 here in Minnesota.
Mhm.
Um, it doesn't really show much for drought yet, but if we don't catch any rains, we're going to add some colors to that map for us. As you move north, it's starting to become um, more of an issue. They haven't had much rain since they planted, but getting back to that pricing and overall yield, yeah, guys are concerned if what's going to happen with pricing, because if we don't have enough demand, or if we don't have enough supply to meet that demand, we're really hoping to see a change in that market to increase the price. So we'll see. That all those decisions are made way above our pay grade, and we just got to deal with it. So
Right, right. No, I agree. Depending on what happens this fall with commodity prices, drought, if we pick up any moisture at all to help relieve that drought, do you foresee any potential changes coming to your area for 2024? Maybe going to more water efficient crops, or switching crops to maybe soybeans, or something else compared to corn.
I don't. It it's been a tough. It would be tough for guys, I think, to do that, just because we've got quite a few ethanol plants in the area.
Hmm.
There is a demand for it, and so um, in Southwest Minnesota, corn is king. As you move north into Renville County, you start getting into some sugar beets and stuff, but um, everywhere else, corn is king. And I I would be shocked to see if anything does change on that side.
Yeah. I mean, when you mentioned corn is king, that's an interesting comment, because I've heard that throughout my travels and across the country, that corn is still the number one crop that everybody's focused on. As we move forward, we've got different input costs, higher input costs, and things like that. So sometimes people will will change their mind. But obviously, you're driven heavily by the ethanol market. What about silage? Anything in silage in your area?
There's some silage, but um, there's some larger dairies as you move north in the Wilmer area. Um, some beef operations around, but silage is kind of minimal as well. So
Mm-hmm. I know one focus on the product side, for Latham this year is, focusing a lot on Power Core and List. You've had the chance to look at a couple Power Core and List hybrids out there. How are they looking, and what's your thoughts on Power Core?
I think they look great. Um, I've had some experience with 5646 in the past where we've sold a few units of that in my territory,
Mm-hmm.
and just overall standability, and it's a really good product. And then bring in more forward as we move into next year with 5336 and 5556. Um, I noticed they were um, they were a little slower out of the ground coming up with emergence,
Mm-hmm.
but as we now they're really you really can't tell any difference. It was really even emergence, and even across the board on getting out of the ground around the same time. It was just most of them are right next to 5245, and 5245 is always the first one out of the ground, and so you
Uh,
just kind of compare it to that. So that's my comment. Why I make that comment that it was a little slower, just because it's right next to 5245, which is always the first out of the ground. So,
right.
but
Right.
right now they've really caught up and even are progressing really nicely. I'm excited to as we get into that tassel time and getting to the ear set to really look at the plant characteristics on the ear type. And I was actually just going through some old notes of our sneak peek meetings and stuff, and how those products what different characteristics and different notes I had. Like 5336 has got really good late season stay green
Right.
and long girthy ears, great disease package. So I'm excited to dig deeper into those two products as we get into um, August and September, where we get
Mm-hmm.
some ear sets and be able to look at plant characteristics a little deeper.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get some good ear sets this year. Obviously, it has to shower a couple times for us to,
That's right.
get something to look at. But one other thing that Latham is really starting to focus on and beginning to push toward growers is conventionals. Do you see much demand for conventionals? I know it may not be for everybody, but we kind of look at it as a great pricing mix. You don't need to plant your whole farm to it, and there's some really solid products out there too.
Yeah, I agree. I think conventional is going to have a place as we continue to move forward. Just hearing the competition, a lot of companies are taking conventionals out of their lineup, and
Right.
so being able to have that option in our lineup, I think, is going to be a good play. Um, Conventional, it's really in different pockets, and um, in my territory,
Mhm.
one area you'll sell quite a bit conventionals, and as you move 30 miles away, you won't sell a bag of conventional. So it's really just in pockets and what that demand is. So um, yeah, it just having those conversations up front, and
Right.
if that grower can manage the insects um, and um, their herbicide program, you just have those conversations up front to be able to manage those different things, and it can work out pretty well. So
Right. Right. So one thing just to point out to listeners, if you come down to our Premier Agronomy Center in Alexander, up to our one in Glendon, you'll be able to see that everything was treated with a conventional herbicide, nice clean field. So you'll be able to see if you start clean, you end clean, and you really don't need to put that money out for glyphosate, glufosinate, and things like that. which is always good.
Yeah.
Well, and with that, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Proof Points. Thanks for tuning in and have a great week.